welcome. So there's two things going on here. The first is kind of a direct onslaught of the private equity onslaught from last week. The more recent one is this piece where she warns about this economic crash and, again, kind of using it to say, here's how I'm going to come in and save it. What are her plans?
Right. Well, she's got multiple plans. I mean, this thing sort of surprised me in that, she's calling for an economic crash, and it could look pretty silly if it doesn't happen over the next couple of years. And I think...
But that's such a loose time frame.
It's a loose time frame. But she also, I think, misrepresented some of the numbers in that she's talking about, household debt being at unprecedented levels. She didn't, sort of qualify anything for inflation. And if you look at debt to income right now, it's actually much lower than it was before the crisis, and actually doesn't look that bad. So I think there's some exaggeration in here, and it's a, pretty big thing to call a crash coming. But what she's calling for is, get rid of a lot of student loan debt, crack down on Wall Street. A lot of the stuff she's, green manufacturing deal, a lot of stuff she's called for before is what her prescription is for fixing the crisis.
Right, but it's interesting to me, and we see this happen a lot of times with prognosticators. It's in their own interest to say something dramatic because their career is to get attention to be a prognosticator. If you're a politician who has solutions, but no one else sees the urgency in implementing them or necessarily thinks they're appropriate, well, nothing like saying, hey, this is all going to crash down unless I come and it gives an urgency to the need to do these dramatic things to the economy that otherwise a lot of people might not see the need.
Yeah, that's true. And it also, it feels a little Trumpian in the sense that, only I alone can come and fix it, this crisis that is about to happen. And there is some overlap in the populist appeal. Obviously they have very different bases, but they are appealing to people who think that, the system is rigged and fixed against them. But I think the headline is really where it seems a little odd. Here's the coming economic crisis. I kind of expected to read like the case for buying gold right now, that we should all panic and buy gold. But, she is saying there's some fundamental problems with the economy, and here's what I would do to fix it.
And sure, and there's plenty of people who would agree with that. But again, this would add urgency to the discussion no matter what. Let me ask you as well, what I thought was fascinating is you're talking about how Wall Street is not necessarily, quote unquote, afraid of Elizabeth Warren. And I think this is something that's misrepresented a lot. There are a lot of people very successful up and down Wall Street who support a lot of these Democratic and progressive candidates whose policies would hurt them, but in this case, in Elizabeth Warren's case, it has not really hurt her standing with these kind of fundraisers, has it?
Yeah, well, there's two things going on here. One is that she's not Bernie Sanders. And so there are a lot of people on Wall Street who don't necessarily want a super progressive candidate to get the nomination. They'd be happier with Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris. But they look and say, if the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is going to win out, Bernie Sanders is someone who says, I'm a socialist, I want to tear down the system. Warren says, I'm a capitalist, I believe in free markets, but putting, cops on the street. They don't necessarily love some of her Wall Street proposals, but they would definitely take her, somebody they understand and think they can deal with, over somebody who is, wants to tear everything down.
She would end the private equity industry with this proposal last week.
She would. I think they probably think that, there's not a lot of constituency in Washington to do some of the things she's talked about on private equity in terms of, having skin in the game on debt and getting rid of carried interest. Like, they think they could probably manage that in Washington. They'd probably have to pay slightly higher tax rates. Maybe they can deal with that. But as you said, Wall Street now is not what it was a few years ago. There's more progressives, there's more women, there's more diversity. It's not super diverse, but it's more than it was. And a lot of folks who believe that Warren is right on a lot of her issues and would be willing to pay a higher tax rate.
Fascinating.